Hello friends, and welcome to The Hanged Man in the Moon. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you for coming. I'm pleased to meet you. If you've been here before, thank you for returning. I'm truly honored. If you are a returning visitor, then you know that this is my series in which I use tarot and oracle cards to dive into topics related to living an intentional life. And let me ask you a question before we begin. I'd like you to think of the word vulnerability. What does the word vulnerability mean to you? Does it mean being open to attack, being vulnerable in the face of an enemy? Does it mean baring yourself, baring your breast, and allowing yourself to be hurt, to experience heartbreak, for example? Are there other meanings of vulnerability that you can think of? Are there perhaps even more positive aspects to vulnerability? Could vulnerability also be the position, the stance, the ability to receive? In this week's tarot spread, we're going to be examining vulnerability and why vulnerability is so important when we want to live an intentional life. So friends, we've got a tarot spread all laid out as usual. Let me show you the spread. I say this every week, I say this every time, and yet it is still true. This is an absolutely beautiful spread. The cards, the decks are gorgeous. They're luscious in a way. And if you're curious about what the decks are, who the creators are, as usual, there will be a clip at the end of this video describing, telling you who the creators are and what the decks are. And as always, there will be links below the video if you want to go and purchase one or most of these decks on your own. I don't get any money from those links. I'm just providing them as a service to you. Unfortunately, one of the decks is out of print, which I think I have already mentioned in previous videos. However, I still put a link to the creator's site because this creator has already produced two gorgeous decks. I have one which is completely out of print, the one that we're using in this spread. I do not have the first deck, which I really, really wish I had, the Tarot of Delphi, I think it's called. But if you go to the site and put in your email address, you might be able to get onto a mailing list and be informed of when this creator puts out another deck, a third deck perhaps. I hope there will be a third deck because I love the way the first two look. So check out that information. And again, we're looking at the spread. And the spread is partially related to vulnerability, but mostly related to the idea of source, of the divine. And so, as you looked at the spread, you probably noticed, as usual, there is a set of 3 cards in the center, which give the main idea for this spread. And then there are 4 questions on the perimeter, which are being answered by 2 tarot cards each, delving more deeply into those ideas. And the questions this week, I think, are, if possible, even more pertinent than usual. So, I hope you stick around for the whole thing. Let's take a look at the first 3 oracle cards of this spread. The 3 cards of the center of the spread are vulnerability, structure, and source. And I think probably the main idea of this spread is source. That is the focus of this entire spread. And as usual, the question was, how can we live more intentionally in the coming week? And the answer, I think the primary answer, is source. Because if we want to live intentionally, we know that we want to be open to the powerful flow of intention, and that powerful flow of intention emanates both from source, from the divine, whatever we want to call that, be that God, be that Allah, be that Brahman, be that the great mother, the divine mother, Gaia, whatever you want to call the universal consciousness, Buddha. There are so many names we give the divine source of everything, the divine source of each of us, which are here. Each one of us is here as spirit having a human experience, but we are inseparable from the source of everything. So, the answer to all questions is always source. However, in this week's spread, we're really focusing on source in a specific way. Now, in this card, what do we see? We see two spheres. Yeah? If we imagine one of them being perhaps source and one of them being perhaps us. Yeah? It's an act of receiving. When we live our intentional lives, we are receiving. We put an intention out there, it is manifested for us. And we receive it. We move in the direction of it and we receive it. It's an action of meeting, of gathering, of integration. And that integration is less in the act of making things happen, of pounding things into place, as it is preparing ourselves for that meeting, for that union. And that's all the flow of intention, which is also the flow of source, of the divine. Now, this card in this spread is suggesting us to do some very important things. It's suggesting that we remember that source, God, the divine, Brahman, Allah, Great Mother, Divine Mother, the Creatrix, Venus, Aphrodite, are all the wellspring of inspiration and knowledge. Yes? All inspiration and all knowledge spring from source. And perhaps that is the first emanation from the non-physical, is the inspiration. And then the knowledge. It's also remembering that we have access to source, to that inspiration, to that knowledge. And how? The creator of this deck suggests by doing what we love and loving what we do. Both of them are important. The creator says doing what we love, but as we do what we love, we also want to remember that we love what we do. And also looking to nature, because nature is a wonderful book of knowledge for us, a book of knowledge of the abundance that exists around us, of the wonderful continuing evolution that this physical plane is. This physical universe is abundance and evolution, and nature is the book of all of that knowledge and all of that inspiration and all of that passion for life in all of its diversity. And source is all of that, and we have access to all of that. And one way, if we sometimes lose our ability to recognize or to feel or to be inspired by our flow of intention, where can we look? One of the great places to look is always nature. Yeah, the trees, the plants, the rivers, the ocean, the mountains. Wherever we each, I think, have our own special source of inspiration. For some, it's mostly mountains. For others, it's mostly sea. For others, it's a combination. For some, it's the jungle. For some, it's wide open spaces, like the Great Plains of the United States. Yeah? Whatever calls our hearts and makes our hearts sing, that is a source of inspiration. And that is often in nature. And one of the best places for us to go is nature in all of its diversity. This card also reminds us to find ways to dip into the limitless potential that source is. One way is to go out into nature and to open ourselves to it. But there are other ways to dip into the limitless potential of source. A meeting with a friend could be that. Yeah? Being with someone we are comfortable with, we feel intimate with, that we can share with, that we can share love with. More so than someone that we can share our pain with. We want to be able to share our pain, certainly. But to tap into the limitless potential, we want to be able to share love, to share joy. All of those open feelings. The joyful, celebratory feelings. So sometimes that could be a person that we can go to help dip into that source of potential. It could be a book, a library. It could be art. What inspires you? Or better, what opens you to inspiration? Who opens you to inspiration? Those are questions we want to remind ourselves of. And if we need to, make a list. Because often when we feel shut off from or separated from our source of inspiration, those people, those things, those activities don't spring to mind as readily. So we sometimes having a list of those things that we can remind ourselves of. For some people, that can be very, very helpful. And also, I think we want to remember that as we find ways to dip into the limitless potential that source is, that our divine is, that as we take one step forward towards the divine comes comes toward us, comes at us like a speeding car, comes toward us 10 steps. Now, we take one step towards the divine, and the divine comes 10 steps closer to us. Now, that's a metaphor, because frankly, we cannot separate ourselves from the divine. There is no separation. There is only integration. There is only connectedness. There is only unity. There is only oneness. But that feeling of being separated, there's that feeling of gap that we create. We create that gap in our fear, in our sadness, in our feeling of powerlessness or anxiety. We create that gap. We cut ourselves off, not 100%, but we bring up walls between ourselves and the source, the divine, by all of those names. So as we take one step closer back into union, into recognition of union, divine will take 10 more steps towards us. That's a metaphor. It's not an actual fact. And it's a beautiful metaphor that I think I heard mostly from Colette Baron-Reid, one of my favorite oracle creators and teachers of connection with spirit. So, source, remembering that source is our wellspring of inspiration, knowledge, and that we are always connected, and even when we feel separated, we can always find our way back in many different ways, nature, other people. And that's the main point, I think, for this layout, this spread. But we've got two more cards here to remind us two more important points. Because there are many times when we feel like we're asking for stuff, or we're asking for inspiration, or we're asking for... What are things that you ask for? What are things that you pray for, that you hope for? Are you praying for things, asking for things now? If we're asking for things, if we're praying for things, we're also recognizing that they are not in our experience now. We don't have perhaps the relationship we're looking for, or we are not having the experience that we want to have. We're perhaps not living in the place that we want to live, or working at the job, or doing the kind of work that we want to do. Or our family integration and relations are not the way we hoped they would be. Perhaps our physical well-being is not as robust as we'd hoped it would be. So if we're praying for things, if we're hoping for things, we're also recognizing that they are not in our experience here at this present moment. And oftentimes we feel like after a period of time, we're not getting any response to our prayers, to our requests, to our intentions. But friends, we are always responded to. Source always responds to us. The divine always answers our prayers. Universal consciousness is always there, working with us, creating with us. And the creation is always created the moment we ask for it, the moment we conceptualize it, the moment we intend it. It's there. And we're moving towards it at varying speeds. And so, the first card on the left of this spread, vulnerability, is a very important card. And so that's why I began this video with that question. What is vulnerability to you? In this card, we're reminded that vulnerability is like a flower opening. And that's what the image of this card is supposed to be. It's a flower opening. And as the flower opens, the designer of this card indicates that the butterfly says yes. And so the creator intended an image of a butterfly, I believe, descending on a beautiful, perhaps an iris or another kind of flower. I saw something different. I see an angel. And I'm not one for angelology and specific angels being out there as in distinct personalities, distinct from one another. I don't know. To me, spirit is not so rank and file as a lot of descriptions of the angelic world seem to be. Yeah? It's possible. If you believe in angels in the sense of like archangels and seraphim and all of that, that's great. That's wonderful. That's not my understanding. That's not the way I conceptualize or understand the non-physical. However, we all have our ways of understanding non-physical, and each one of our ways is valid. But I do see an angel here. I see as a representation of spirit waiting for us to open. Potential for great rewards is part of vulnerability. Because the times that we are asking for things, the times that we're begging for things, the times that we are praying for things to happen are often times that we are closed off from our flow of intention and from receiving from the divine. And friends, the way I understand our relationship with divine is that divine is always ready to answer. Source is ready to answer. The question is, are we ready to receive? And when we're afraid, when we feel lack, when we feel missingness, we have closed ourselves off from being able to receive. And the agreement that we have made is free will. We have the free will to close ourselves off from the divine. We have the free will to choose what we're going to do. And one of those options is to close ourselves off from receiving. And when we're begging and pleading for things, when we're feeling all of that negative emotion, it's an indication that we are separating ourselves as much as we possibly can from the divine. We can't separate ourselves 100% because then we'd pop out of existence, which is not going to happen. But we are separating ourselves from being able to receive. And divine, God, Brahman, Krishna are always there waiting to offer, to give, when we are ready to receive. And those times when it seemed like a prayer was miraculously answered in a moment, a split second, it felt like perhaps the divine cracked us open, when actually it was that we just, at that split second, were not able to hold our barriers up any longer. And the moment we let go, divine was able to enter and do the work, help us with the work. The divine doesn't do the work for us. The divine helps us with the work. The divine helps move us along with the powerful flow of intention. And so vulnerability, to live an intentional life, we want to be vulnerable, open to receiving. We want to remember the potential for great rewards in opening ourselves, both to the divine and to the powerful flow of intention. We want to also remember that vulnerability opens us up to be able to share gifts that we have with others, gifts with the world. Because remember, if we're closed off and we're hoarding our gifts, whatever they may be, whether they are material gifts, whether they are creative gifts, the gifts of love, the gifts of time, the gifts of attention, all of those gifts that we have to share with the world, knowledge, inspiration, excitement, joy, all of those gifts, if we have shut ourselves off, if we have protected ourselves, we can't share. And it's in sharing that we co-create this universe. It's in sharing that we inspire each other and receive and give, and that economy of intention and co-creation can happen. And we want vulnerability. We want to be open to be able to do that. We also want vulnerability because it brings acceptance and recognition for who we are. When we have barriers built up around us, we can't receive the recognition because no one can see who we are. We cannot get the acceptance that we want because no one can accept us if we are closed off. So all of those things that we want, all of those things that we feel that we are praying for inside of our barriers, inside of the walls that we have built up to keep ourselves safe, are only possible when we open ourselves up to them. We allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Like a flower opening, we can share with the world and we receive so much from Spirit, from the people around us. Because this is, in fact, a friendly universe, a creative universe, a loving universe that springs forth from joy, in joy, from the divine source. Now, why is it that divine has decided with us that divine is not going to crack us open for us, is not going to break our barriers, is not going to break us open without our consent? Yeah? Why is it that we have to make the first effort to open the door just a crack so that divine can come in? Why have we made this agreement in free will? Well, because of several things. One is that divine and we as eternal beings know that all of this fear, this protectiveness vanishes the moment we leave these bodies. So all of those wishes, those dreams, those hopes will be fulfilled once we leave the body eventually. Yeah? Spirit, our eternal selves, and God, the divine, are all seeing the eternal long game, if you will. Not this moment by moment, brief physical life that we have this time around, because this time around, I believe, is not our only time around. And even if it is our only time around in this body or in a body, that is not the end of life. We are eternal beings having this vacation here in a physical body, in this human vacation. So, the divine knows that the barriers are going to come down eventually. One way or another, the barriers are going to come down. So we make this agreement. You can do what you want. You do you, boo. Yeah? Come here, do what you want to do, and then come back out and be who you really are. Spirit. Eternal. Something that was never born and will never die, because we are non-physical beings. And only physical things can die. Die in our human understanding of death. Because, again, our understanding of death is not complete, is not even true in some ways. We make that delineation. This is what birth is, this is what death is, and the truth is so much wider, broader, deeper, diverse than that. And so we get the possibility to build up walls. We get the free will to build up walls, to protect ourselves. But what we really, really want to do is to be vulnerable, to open ourselves to the powerful flow of intention. And then we come to the next card. Structure. Because we want to have strong organization and arrangement as beings in a physical universe. We want to have structure. We want to have the structure which allows us to navigate the complexities of this physical universe and run our lives smoothly. Even a river has structure. Even the ocean has structure, has a form. And in this card, what do we see? We see two pyramids or two triangles. We don't really see it in 3 dimensions. We see it in 2 dimensions. There's a triangle facing up and a dark triangle facing down. But you notice that in each triangle, there are more triangles. And there are open spaces. Because structure does not necessarily mean barrier. It does give us borders, but it doesn't necessarily mean barrier. A structure gives us foundation, and one of the greater foundations, like the pyramids in Egypt and in Mexico and in Northeast Asia, they are well structured. They stand the test of time. They give us a foundation and stability in this physical world, which we want. They give us boundaries. And we want boundaries, especially permeable boundaries, like the triangle. Yeah, the triangle is not a hard surface that has no openings. These triangles had openings in the card, and we want to be permeable. We want to have boundaries that are permeable so that we can be vulnerable and still have structure. Think of the simplest biological structure that you can think of. What is that? What is the simplest biological structure that comes to mind? The first thing that comes to my mind is an amoeba. Do you remember amoebas from school? Amoebas? The simple single-cell creatures that look pretty formless in many ways. Yeah? There's no obvious head or arms. There are no limbs. There's no real structure, and it seems to change shape as it moves around. You remember those? You remember seeing them either on videos or in a microscope or in some way? In a video? Oh, I said video. You remember those amoebas? Even the simplest creature, an amoeba, has a boundary. Yeah? It has a cell membrane that keeps itself together. The cell membrane is permeable so that it can absorb nutrients and can expel things that it no longer needs. But there is a structure that keeps it integrated as one whole, moving through its physical environment. So we want structure. We want an open, permeable structure. Like all those cell walls are permeable and able to expand. We want to be able to expand when we want, as we evolve. Now, a very hard border will not expand and will need to rupture when it is time to expand. So we want permeable borders. But we want borders, we want structure that is flexible, able to receive, able to grow, able to let out, able to give. And in that combination of vulnerability within structure, we are able to fully access the powerful flow of intention. We are able to access the inspiration and knowledge of the divine and all of the power and all of the creativity that is there for us and within us. And that's how we want to live intentional lives. And sometimes we're going to close ourselves off. Sometimes we'll get shocked, we'll get scared, we'll lose something and we'll shut off. We feel like we need to protect ourselves, and that's okay. That is okay. But then, when we get centered within ourselves, again, we want to crack the door open just a little bit. If we can just get that door open a little bit, then divine can rush in. Because the divine is waiting patiently, beyond patience. It's just waiting there, waiting for us to be ready. Whenever that's going to be, because we will eventually be ready at some time. Vulnerability. Can you see the beauty of that word? The joy of vulnerability. The love of vulnerability. The expansion of vulnerability. The creativeness of vulnerability. Well, friends, we've got 4 questions to ask of this center spread, and they are very pertinent. Let's get right to the first question. The first question is, what is possible? Now, in this state of being vulnerable to source and having a structure, what is possible? And the 2 answers to this question are, as usual, perfect. The first answer is the Queen of Staves, which is the Queen of Wands in a Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And the second answer is the 7 of Stones, which is the 7 of Pentacles. And these are an excellent balance. A very good balance is what I was going to say. The Queen of Staves, the Queen of Wands, is a perfect answer. As we have flown from vulnerability and source, the Queen of Wands is better than the King of Wands in this sense. Not that the King of Wands and the Queen of Wands, that we need to decide who's better, who's on top, if you will. The Queen of Staves is the card of courage, and we want courage to be vulnerable. It's the card of confidence, the card of independence, the card of self-assuredness and determination, which are all things we want to be and have and experience and live as we are vulnerable. Because we want that. I was going to say need, but we want all of those things within our vulnerability. If we're scared, if we're afraid, if we lack confidence, our vulnerability is going to attract things to make us more afraid, to make us feel less confident. Now, our experience is going to reflect who we see ourselves as being. So, as we keep ourselves vulnerable, we also want to be connected with our courage, be confident in who we are. Be the Queen of Wands. Now, why more so the Queen of Wands than the King of Wands? Because the Queen of Wands is also the one who flows out, flows her fire out, shares her fire. Now, rather than leading, in this spread, we want to be the sharer. We want to be open to giving, to nurturing the creativity of others as well. We want to be nurturing and inspiring others, knowing that the more that we nurture, the more that we inspire, the more that we receive. And we're not doing it in order to receive. It's not so, it is transactional, but it's not the transaction in the sense of, I'm going to give you this much so I get that much back. It's not like you're investing in the stock market hoping for greater dividends. It's more, you give, and as we give, we are surprised by how much we receive. And as we receive more, we're able to give more. And it's in that cycle, that interchange, that transaction, that evolution occurs. And that's why this universe is always evolving, because that is the transaction of all of this physical universe. So we want to be participants in that transaction, in that exchange, in that economy, if you will, of inspiration and creativity and passion. And that's all the Queen of Wands, all of that. And then we have the Seven of Stone, the Seven of Pentacles, which gives us the patience, I think. Because we want to do all of that, but we also want to have patience. Patience to be able to watch things develop, watch things grow, watch things blossom. Believe, trust that the seeds that we have planted are going to blossom. The Seven of Pentacles, to me, in this card, what do we see? We see a very bucolic, it looks like a farm off to one side, and if you can see, there's a small figure in the sunlight, the lit area, just outside of the gate or the fence around the home, the yard of the home. And the figure looks like they're looking out at the world. Yeah, it's having a long-term view. It's waiting for results. Patiently, not when is this pumpkin going to get ripe, or planting a seed. That's one thing I love that, do you know Abraham Hicks? One of my other favorite teachers. Put a seed, a kernel of corn in the ground, and then wait a couple of hours and dig it up and see if it's ready. That's not what we do. Yeah? We plant the corn and we trust, we believe that it is going to grow, it's going to blossom, it's going to bear fruit. The fruit is corn stalks, yeah, and we're going to have a harvest. So that's the Seven of Stones, being ready to wait for the results. And also being attentive, evaluating the progress, noticing where things might need to be pruned, because nature can sometimes be excessive in its growth. Yeah, if we might want to prune things so that what we are growing is moving in the direction of our powerful flow of intention. We want to have perseverance, and we want to be able to prune. And that is all part of the Seven of Pentacles to me. Can you see how that could be helpful? To not only be the Queen of Wands of confidence and creativity and sharing all of that, but also being able to wait and see how things are developing, to trust in the growth of what we have planted, and to be observant and be willing to prune where it's necessary. And that is what is possible. And what a beautiful possibility that is. That's how this universe, I believe, is created and continues to be created every moment of every day. We are being asked, where can I be more open? And what could be a more perfect question for this spread? Yeah, about source and vulnerability. Where can I be more open? That's a good question to be asking ourselves every moment, perhaps. Because oftentimes our barriers, our blockages, our self-defensiveness springs up without our even noticing it. So checking, where can I be more open? Now, and now, and now. Where can you be more open? Where can we be more open? The two answers to this question are wonderful. The first one is the Eight of Swords. First time when I saw that card, I thought, what the heck? We'll get to that in a moment. How do we move from what the heck to perfect answer? The second answer is the Rider of Trees, which is the Knight of Wands. And we'll notice there's a lot of fire in this spread. There's a lot of wand energy in this spread, which is perfect because that's the first step of creation. It's the wands, at least in my understanding. The first step in creation is the passion, is the fire, the big bang. And then we move into the water of creativity, and then we move into the air of observing, looking at the other, noticing. And then we move into the firm hardness of substance of pentacles. So, sorry, off topic, wands. Yeah, the rider, the Knight of Wands. We went from the Queen of Wands of what is possible to where can I be more open, the Eight of Swords, and the Rider or the Knight of Wands. And in the Eight of Swords card from the Tilbrook Tarot, we notice a brick wall with a barbed wire above. Now in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, what do we usually see? We usually see usually a female figure, a woman figure, female, woman figure. Eyes are blindfolded. She's bound to some extent. And there are 8 swords around her. And there's always a little bit of a gap where she could possibly sneak herself out. She could use those swords to cut the ties that are binding her. And then take off her blindfold and then perhaps see how to get herself out. So the Eight of Swords is usually the card of negative thoughts. Yeah? Self-imposed restrictions. Victim mentality, feeling like we have been imprisoned. And we have been imprisoned by our own thoughts. We have created our own prisons that we can get out of. We can certainly get out of them, but we have created our own prisons. And it's a mental captivity. Now, our constraints are a mental captivity. There's a wonderful book by, I'll put his name below. I think his name is, the name's not coming to me. Frank. Okay, I'll put his name below. He's a survivor of the concentration camps during the Holocaust. And he writes a book about how Well, he writes a book about the horrible conditions in the Holocaust, in the concentration camps, about starvation, people dying, and he notices who are better able to survive these conditions. He also notices that though his body is confined within the camp, his heart and his mind are not. And his heart and his mind not being confined is his choice. And being able to break free of his own self-constructed prison within his mind of fear and anxiety and suffering, he is better able to survive in those circumstances and survives to live to tell the tale. Nelson Mandela writes similarly about his experience in prison, of freeing himself. Though his body was restricted, his mind and his spirit were free to develop, to grow, to educate himself. So, our prisons are of our own construction. So where can I be more open? First thing, I can take off the blindfold and find a way out of my own prison. Isn't that a perfect answer? And find a way to become more vulnerable. More vulnerable to what? To Knight of Wands, to Rider of Trees in the Majestic Earth Tarot, but to Knight of Wands in the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot, which is a very active knight. Of the knights, some people think that the Knight of Swords, the Air Knight, is the most active, but the Knight of Wands is pretty darn active, if you ask me. He's the Knight of Energy, yeah, that fire. The fire that is inflamed by air, that is brought forth with air. So he's the Knight of Passion, of inspired action, because we want to act. We came into this physical world, into this human experience, to act, to do, to experience, to taste, to feel, to create, to mold. We want to do all of that from an inspired state, rather than I've got to do it state, a feeling of obligation or requirement or I'll do it if I have to. But inspired action, that's the Knight of Wands. Adventure. When we break ourselves free from our prisons and we're open, and vulnerable, we're able to go out and have an adventure. That's where I can be more open. And impulsiveness. There is a good side to impulsiveness. Spontaneity. Perhaps a little bit of impetuousness. Doing something that people might not expect of me. Something a little bit risky. Something a little bit off the cuff. Gives us a brand new experience that will feed the flame, that will feed our inner fire of energy, of passion, of adventure. And we can be more open in that way, open to taking some risks, not stupid risks. I mean, I'm not suggesting that we see a cliff and say, let's jump. Or we see a raging fire and we say, let's put our hand in there. Not that kind of risk, yeah? But risks, things that we had perhaps thought, no, I don't think I can do that. I'm not sure I'm able to do that now or perhaps anymore. Maybe I'm too old. Maybe I'm too young. Maybe I'm too something. I don't know. I see other people doing it, but I don't know. Yeah, those kinds of risks. Things that have attracted us, but we stop ourselves because we think that we maybe shouldn't do it. Not because it's stupid, but because perhaps people would think strangely of us, or perhaps we might fail, or those kinds of risks, those kinds of impetuousnesses. Not that you're going to lose all of your money, you're going to spend your savings on something, but treat yourself to something you might not ordinarily treat yourself to. Be open to doing those things that can help kindle the passion within our vulnerable state to be able to receive more. That's where we can be more open. And be more open to sharing, giving away. Because again, the more we give, the more that we're going to receive. Let's look at the third question. The third question is, how can I shine more brightly? Now, we've gone from what's possible. What is possible? Where can I be more open? And as we open, and we've rekindled the fire of passion, that light will shine. So this is a perfect next question. How can I shine more brightly? In my vulnerability, in my openness to Source, I want to shine back on those around me and into the universe, and just in reflection of the light of the divine, as the moon shines with the light of the sun. How can I shine more brightly? And the two answers we have are the Four of Staves, which is the Four of Wands in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and we have the Ten of Stone, which is the Ten of Pentacles in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And these are an interesting answer to how can I shine more brightly. And the Four of Wands, in this card from the Tilwick, we have a surprising image. Now, in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, we have four wands standing out on a hill, perhaps, with grass and maybe some fruits lying out and some laurels hanging from the wands. And there are people in the distance looking like they're coming towards those wands that have been set up for a celebration. And we get the idea of celebration, celebrating milestones, relaxation and harmony. Some people see it as a wedding card. I don't. But I suppose depending on how the other cards around that card were laying, maybe if the Two of Cups were near it, and maybe a lover, the love card, the lover's card were near it, maybe a marriage might be possible, I suppose, or some other cards. But just on its own, I don't see marriage. However, celebration, celebrating milestones, celebrating harmony, relaxation and enjoyment. But in the Tilwick, we have what? We got 4 paintbrushes and a painter's palette. But they're set down for the moment, which I guess could be a good indication that, yes, take a moment, look at what you've done, look at how far you have come in our creation, and celebrate that. Celebrate how far we've come. I keep saying the same thing, how far we've come. Celebrate the milestones. Yeah? If we're thinking of a painting, yeah, I've set up my frame. If we're doing a canvas, I've set up my frame and I've sized the canvas. I've laid out my background. I've done the rudimentary shape. Wow. I've started filling in that shape. Wow. Now I can start looking for where am I going to start adding detail? How am I going to start doing the shading? Yeah, all of those steps, you can celebrate when each step is complete as far as it could be completed at that moment. Celebrating milestones. And as we celebrate our milestones, that I've completed this, we shine more brightly, right? And then the next card, Ten of Stones, Ten of Pentacles, is the card of wealth. Certainly, of legacy. Because as we're celebrating our milestone on this leg of our journey of creation, this is not our first leg of creation. This is not our first leg of the journey. We've got a whole bunch that we've come through, and we've created, and we've developed, and we've evolved. And that is our legacy. Recognizing that not only have we come to this milestone on this creative endeavor, but we've got so much that we have provided and created up until now. That is our legacy. recognizing that. Financial security. I hope that you have financial security. And if you do have financial security, if you are feeling stable, whatever that means to you, maybe you have a cabin out in the woods that you feel is yours. Maybe you have a large house in the suburb of some wonderful city. Maybe you have an apartment inside of the city. Whatever that is, if it feels secure to you, like you have your place, that's a great way to shine. Recognizing it, remembering it. Yeah, maybe it's not exactly what you want. Maybe there's another stage of evolution that you're intending, that you've intended for yourself, which is wonderful, and that's going to happen. But recognizing what is here in this moment, the legacy that you have established here in this moment, is a great way for us to shine. Being able to offer to others as well, be it a cookie or a carrot stick or a coat or a blanket or perhaps some money or perhaps our time, our resources, whatever our resources are. The 10 of coins is the one where I have enough, that I feel stable, and I'm able to help others as well. Which is a new revelation that I got recently about the 10 of Pentacles. Yeah, it's legacy, certainly, but it's also being able to be there in resources for others. Whatever those resources are, food, time, shelter, other objects. We can be there for others. And as we are there for others, we again shine. We shine in those moments. It's a card of our contributions to society. Now remember, as we receive, we give. That's a way of shining. And long-term success. Because the road, the path, the river of intention is a river of long-term success. An echo from the 7 of Pentacles. Now, long-term view, long-term success. And these are ways we can shine more brightly. Yeah. Celebrating where we are and what we've created and sharing. Being there for others. Let's look at the 4th question. The last question, what can I celebrate, flows right from that 4 of Wands, right? What can I celebrate? We said celebrate milestones. Well, what can I celebrate? And remember the progression that we've come through in this exploration of this spread. We've come from being vulnerable and open with structure, but open to source, to the divine, to receiving and to giving. And what is possible is that we are able to be independent. We are able to create, be self-assured, be passionate, and trust that what we have planted will grow, and observe. And as we do that, we can be more open. We can be more open. We can get ourselves out of our mental shackles and go out and explore and enjoy and experience and create. And as we do that, we can shine more brightly. We can shine brightly by recognizing where we are and celebrating that milestone, and by giving, sharing in our place of stability, in our structure, the structure that we have created for ourselves. So now, what can I celebrate? 2 answers we have here. Queen of Cups and the Steward of Trees, another fire. The Page of Wands. So we've gone from the Queen to the Knight, now to the Page of Wands. The Page of Wands. But let's take a look at the Queen of Cups first. Now, the Queen of Cups, we've got the compassionate one. As we celebrate ourselves, we celebrate others, and as we celebrate others, we offer our compassion. Because we're not only celebrating others in their triumphs, we can celebrate others in their pain, in their suffering. Can you wrap your heart and mind around that? Celebrating someone in their suffering, in their pain, in their heartbreak. Not celebrating that their experience has caused the pain, the heartbreak, the suffering, but celebrating them in their heartbreak, in their pain. That's who this Queen of Cups is, and that is what the Queen of Cups is able to do. Celebrating others in all of their experience. That's what real compassion is to me. Caring for the one in the middle of their experience, be it a joyful, exuberant experience or one of pain and suffering and powerlessness. Because as we celebrate that being who has walled themselves up inside of a prison of powerlessness and anxiety, if we can love and celebrate that person in there, we can eventually help inspire them to perhaps come out. We can nurture them. The Queen of Cups is a nurturer, is a warm, emotionally stable nurturer. Not one trying to break somebody out of their own prison. One who is there, holding them within their prison. Waiting for them to come out. Like the Seven of Pentacles is waiting for the pumpkin or the watermelon or the ear of corn to develop, to sprout, to come out. The Queen of Cups is able to emotionally hold the space for every one of us. She's also the intuitive, the one who can see into the ocean of the unconscious, beyond the veil. And I can celebrate that too. I can celebrate that I am a queen. I am. Remember, the Queen of Cups is not a meek, quiet, how do I want to put this? Inactive, powerless, loving person. The Queen of Cups is a queen. She is powerful. And that's something we can celebrate, that we are powerful. We are powerful. We are powerful. And just as the water can flow around an obstacle, so can the Queen of Cups. In her power, in her knowing, in her trusting, in her caring, in her nurturing, in her intuition. Those are wonderful things to celebrate. And so is the Page of Wands. That's a wonderful balance. The Queen of Cups and the Page of Wands. Now we've got the Queen of Wands going on too, and the Knight of Wands, but the Page of Wands, that youthful spirit. The inspiration, ideas, discovery. We can celebrate all of that as well. That youthful discovery of what is out there, what can I do, what can I create, what can I experience, what? This is so exciting. This physical life can be so exciting and something to celebrate. This Page of Wands is the one of limitless potential. Not developed potential, not developed like the knight or even the queen is, but limitless potential. There's so much that we are able to do. And that's something to celebrate as well. Our limitless potential. And we are limitlessly potentiate. I think that is possible to say. That we have limitless potential. Because we are eternal beings in this physical experience. We have limitless potential, and that's something to celebrate as well as our energy and motivation, which is in there. It's in there. We could be a 99-year-old, a 100-year-old, a 120-year-old human in a body that doesn't look nearly as capable and as flexible as it did when it was 18 or 20 years old, and still have motivation and energy within ourselves. Because it's not the body that does that. It is our eternal self that does that. And that's something to celebrate. That's something to celebrate. That eternal, limitless potential of every moment of every day. As well as our majesty as the Queen of Cups. Our ability to receive all, nurture, to see beyond the physical, and know. Those are wonderful things to celebrate. And we can celebrate all of those things as we are open, as we are vulnerable, with structure, to contain, to hold, to receive, from the divine, from the powerful flow of our intention. So friends, does this make sense to you? I'd love to hear from you. Hit the like button if this has meant something to you. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet. I'd love it if you had reminders of when I upload videos. I do at least one a week. I try to do at least one a week. Sometimes there are more. And share this with somebody who you think might get benefit from it. I hope that this goes out into the world and that there are people who receive benefit from it. And comment below. I would really love to hear from you. What does vulnerability mean to you? Does it scare you? Or can you feel confident in your vulnerability? Not brazenly confident as in, I am vulnerable, damn it. That is not vulnerability. At least that's not the vulnerability that I'm speaking of here. The vulnerability that we're speaking of is open, it's porous, it's receptive. Have you felt that? When have you felt that? What have you felt like you've received? What have you felt like you've given at those times? Have you felt the powerful flow of source of the divine into you? That integration, the fullness of the divine. I'd love to hear from you. And friends, remember, in just a moment, there will be information about the decks, so stay tuned for that. And friends, now, as always, I wish you love, joy, well-being, and pure awareness. Thank you.